The red and blue lights pierced the quiet afternoon air, flashing behind the sleek black BMW as it slowed to a stop along the curb. Officer Daniel Reagan stepped out of his cruiser with purpose. His belt clinked softly as he walked, hand already resting near his holster. License and registration. Now he snapped. The man behind the wheel didn't argue, didn't panic. He simply kept both hands on the steering wheel, fingers spread, posture still. Calm. "Of course, officer," the man replied evenly. "May I reach into my glove box?" But something in his tone rubbed Reagan the wrong way. Too composed. Too confident. His jaw clenched. "Step out of the vehicle," Reagan ordered. The man hesitated, not out of fear, but disappointment. He sighed. "Are you sure?" That response was all it took. Reagan stepped back and reached for his radio. "Need backup. Suspicious vehicle. Black male driver. Possible noncompliance." Within minutes, 2 more squad cars arrived. Doors slammed. Officers approached. The man stepped out slowly, every motion deliberate. No sudden moves. No raised voice. Controlled. Centered. And as they surrounded him, voices sharp, hands twitching near their belts. They had no idea who they were talking to. This wasn't just another stop. This wasn't just another day. Because the man they were profiling wasn't just some driver. He was the new director of internal affairs. And change had just arrived. Marcus Tate didn't want power. He wanted peace. He didn't crave titles, didn't chase attention. He believed in doing the work, even when no one was watching. At 42, Marcus was tired. Not physically, but spiritually. Tired of sitting at polished tables where his voice had to be twice as calm to be heard half as much. Tired of being the smartest man in the room, but still having to prove he belonged there. He grew up in East Atlanta, raised by a father who delivered mail and never once called in sick. A man who worked 37 years without a complaint, yet still got followed in department stores and denied loans. Marcus watched the toll of quiet dignity stretch across his father's back like folded paper. He promised himself he'd make change. Not with signs, but with systems. So he studied. Law school. Civil rights fellowships. He worked cases no one wanted. Defending the voiceless, challenging corruption, collecting every document, every name, every fact. Marcus didn't carry a gun. He carried leverage. He wore pressed suits and quiet sneakers. Carried a beat-up leather notebook filled with truth. Called his mother every Sunday. Never raised his voice, because he knew his silence carried more weight. After years in the shadows, digging, documenting, correcting, Marcus was appointed director of internal affairs. He now had the authority to investigate misconduct in every precinct. Badge or not, no one was off limits. But Marcus didn't put it on display. He didn't need sirens to validate his rank. He believed the most effective power wasn't loud, it was precise. So when he drove through that quiet suburb in his clean black BMW, mind on policy memos and a call with the city attorney, he wasn't thinking about injustice. He was thinking about dinner. He didn't see the patrol car behind him. Didn't hear Officer Reagan's assumptions. Because in that moment, in that uniformed man's eyes, Marcus wasn't a director. He wasn't a reformer. He wasn't even a person with a story. He was just another black man behind the wheel. And that was all Reagan needed to see. Officer Daniel Reagan was the golden boy of Precinct 12. He looked the part, tall, broad-shouldered, buzz cut clean. Polished boots, iron blues, jaw always tight. He was the poster child for law and order. Commendations lined his locker. Quick response times. High arrest rates. Supervisors praised his decisiveness. But there was another side to Reagan. One that never made it into the reports. Stops that took minutes when the driver was white, but stretched into interrogations when they weren't. A habit of gut instinct traffic stops that always seemed to land on the wrong skin tone. And complaints? Buried. Labeled inconclusive. Quietly closed. The few officers who noticed just shook their heads. "That's just Ann," they'd say. "Knows how to get things done." That afternoon, Reagan was cruising the West Side Loop. 3 citations deep, all for suspicious activity. one for tinted windows, another for furtive movements. None of them stuck, but numbers were numbers, and Reagan knew how to meet quotas. So when he saw the black BMW idling at the stop sign longer than usual, left blinker on, windows up, he tapped the gas and followed. Out of place for this neighborhood, he muttered to himself. He flipped his lights, turned on the speaker. Pull over to the right. The car complied. Smooth. Clean. No sudden moves. Reagan approached with his hand near his sidearm. Not out of danger, but out of habit. He didn't ask questions. He gave orders. License and registration. The driver nodded calmly. Of course, officer. May I? But Reagan didn't let him finish. Something about his tone. Too measured. Too sure. Reagan didn't like that. The man was too clean. Car too nice. Voice too level. You people think you can do what you want, he snapped. The driver tilted his head. You people. That was it. The moment. Reagan's ego flared. His authority challenged, or so he thought. He reached for his cuffs. The man didn't move. Just looked him dead in the eye, and then at the dash. Are you sure you want to do this? Reagan didn't pause. He stepped back, clicked the radio. Unit 12 requesting backup. Black male. Non-compliant. Might be armed. It was a kind of phrase that activated everything. That phrase had ended lives. That phrase had burned through communities. And that phrase was the lie that started it all. Within minutes, sirens split the silence. 2 patrol cars skidded to a stop on either side of the BMW. Doors flung open. Officers stepped out, weapons already drawn. Hands where we can see them. Marcus didn't move. He stood by the door of his car, feet shoulder-width apart, palms open at chest level. Unarmed. Still. He was reaching. Reagan lied, gesturing frantically. He got an attitude. Something's off, he added, voice firm but shaking underneath. The rookie officer glanced over. You see this a lot, he muttered to his partner. Non-compliance. But something felt different. This man wasn't yelling. He wasn't defiant. He wasn't running or resisting. He was composed, completely still, breathing in slow, measured rhythm. A faint crease lined his forehead, not fear, but calculation. He looked like someone used to being misunderstood, used to being surrounded, used to being underestimated. You're all being recorded, Marcus said evenly. And I suggest you de-escalate. That line cut through the tension like a blade. Reagan's eyes narrowed. You threatening me? He barked. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have to. Instead, he moved. Slowly. Carefully. His right hand dropped. Not fast, not sharp, just deliberate. Reaching. Reagan shouted. 3 weapons locked in his direction. Marcus froze. I'm going into my inner coat pocket, he said aloud. My ID is inside. I'm retrieving it now. No sudden gestures. No eye contact. Just clarity. He opened his coat, 2 fingers sliding into the pocket. For a second, every heart on that street held still. And then it appeared. A black leather badge wallet. Gold trim. A crisp seal. Letters shining in the light. Internal Affairs Division. Marcus unfolded it, holding it out with quiet weight. Director Marcus Tate, he said calmly. Internal Affairs. Badge 093. You can call Lieutenant Swanson for confirmation. Silence fell. The rookie officer blinked twice. Wait, Isaiah. Reagan took a half step back. Confused. Angry. Exposed. Where's your ID? He demanded. Marcus raised it again, steady hands, unwavering eyes. The other officers exchanged looks. One by one, their stances dropped. Guns lowered. Brows furrowed. The air shifted. The control Reagan once had evaporated. And now, the threat wasn't the man in the car. It was the mistake they'd all just made. Radio chatter lit up behind them. Confirmed. Director Tate. Stand down. Reagan's hands twitched. He kept his weapon half drawn. His breathing was heavier now. Uncertain. Why didn't you say anything? He asked, voice cracking through the tension. Marcus turned his head. Not all the way, just enough. His eyes landed once more on the cruiser's hood, where the dash unit still blinked red. He spoke softly. Because I shouldn't have to. Reagan flinched, like the words hit him. Marcus didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He just let the silence do what it needed to. The moment hung in the air, uncomfortable and undeniable. The man they had profiled, surrounded, threatened, was the one person in the entire department who had the power to investigate all of them. Not just for this moment, but for every complaint they thought they buried. And he was watching. And he remembered. Lieutenant Swanson arrived 5 minutes later, his patrol SUV rolling up fast and crooked across the pavement. He didn't even shut the door. He jogged toward the scene, face flushed, breath shallow, sweat already forming at his collar. His eyes locked on Marcus. Marcus, Director Tate, I'm... Marcus raised one hand. Not high. Just enough. Don't, he said quietly. Calm but firm. Swanson stopped in his tracks. Behind him, the silence thickened. 3 officers stood still, hands now slack at their sides, unsure whether to speak, move, or vanish altogether. Reagan hadn't moved at all. But something was different now. The stiffness in his stance had cracked into hesitation. He knew. He finally knew. The face was familiar now. Not from this block, but from departmental emails, quarterly memos, policy rollouts, internal affairs. The man they ignored in digital memos was now standing 3 feet in front of him. Marcus spoke, his voice steady, his badge still in hand. By 9 a.m. tomorrow, each of you will receive a summons. You will appear before oversight review. Internal Affairs will be reviewing all dashcam, bodycam, and dispatch logs. Every second, every word. Reagan opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. It wasn't racial. I thought he was. Marcus turned to face him. No malice. Just eyes like steel. You just what, he asked. Pulled your weapon on a peaceful man because his presence felt too calm? He took a step closer. You saw my skin and decided my dignity was defiance. You saw my silence and mistook it for threat. You didn't see a man. You saw a possibility that made you uncomfortable. Reagan's lips parted, but nothing came out. Swanson stepped in, palms slightly up. Maybe we can handle this internally. No, Marcus interrupted. You can't handle something internally when the system itself is compromised. We're going public. External Review Board. Full transparency. A murmur rolled through the growing crowd now gathered along the sidewalks. Phones out. Recording. Watching. People who'd seen this story unfold too many times, but never like this. Because for once, the black man in the driver's seat had the power. And receipts. Marcus glanced toward the crowd, then back to the officers. I kept quiet because I needed to see who you are when you think no one's watching. His gaze lingered on Reagan. Now I know. The rookie officer took a step back, his mouth a thin line of guilt. The 3rd officer turned his eyes to the ground. But Reagan stayed frozen, fingers twitching at his sides. He wasn't used to being questioned. Not like this. You're on leave, Marcus said flatly. Effective immediately. Your access to precinct systems will be suspended by end of day. I suggest you retain counsel. But Reagan began. Marcus cut him off. You lied on dispatch. Said I was armed. Said I was non-compliant. Both are false. You escalated without cause. Whether it was racial will be for the board to decide. But let me make one thing clear. He leaned in, voice dropping just above a whisper. I've ended 8 careers in the last 3 years. Not out of revenge. Not for headlines. But because justice demands accountability. Reagan swallowed hard. I don't want your badge, Marcus said. I want the truth to stand taller than your fear. He turned back to Swanson. I'll expect your written statement by end of day. Swanson nodded, slowly, sheepishly. The weight of hierarchy had shifted. The invisible ladder flipped. Reagan, who had walked up minutes ago with power dripping from his every word, now looked like a child left out in the rain. The crowd was quiet, but their eyes said everything. One woman whispered, "That's the first time I've seen one of them sweat." A man near her murmured, "He's one of the good ones. Real good." Marcus adjusted his coat. He didn't shout. He didn't gloat. He didn't need to. Because the message had landed. Louder than sirens. Sharper than any command. Power doesn't come from volume. It comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing to let anyone make you smaller. By morning, the city was buzzing. The headlines stretched across every news ticker, every feed, every phone screen. Top cop caught racially profiling internal affairs chief. Clips from the dashcam and bodycam footage were everywhere, replayed, reshared, dissected. Marcus's calm. Reagan's lies. The moment the badge came out, you couldn't edit the truth. And this time, the system had caught itself on tape. The police department issued a press release by noon. Words like deep concern, independent investigation, and commitment to accountability filled the page. But to most they rang hollow. Because this wasn't new. The only thing new was that the man behind the wheel had enough rank to make it stick. Reagan was suspended pending review. Badge surrendered. Gun holstered for good. His file was no longer protected by silence. And Marcus? He didn't gloat. Didn't grant interviews. Didn't write an op-ed. He went back to work. Reviewed misconduct files. Followed up on old complaints. Sat in long meetings where no one dared interrupt him anymore. He did it all quietly, intentionally. Because the work wasn't done. It never was. A week later, a handwritten letter arrived at his office. It was from the rookie officer. I didn't know, it read. But I learned. Thank you for how you handled it. I'll be better. Marcus placed it in the back of his notebook, the one he always carried, filled with names, cases, facts. He didn't need praise. But he never dismissed growth. And Reagan? He hired a lawyer. Released a statement blaming stress, department pressure, unclear communication from the suspect. He said it was all a misunderstanding. But the footage didn't lie. And neither did the stillness of the man in the black BMW. Unarmed, unshaken, undeniable. No yelling. No resistance. No threat. Just a man who'd spent his life fixing a system, and finally caught it working against him in real time. That moment, caught on tape, didn't just expose Reagan. It exposed the cost of silence. The danger of assumption. The power of patience. And for once, the system had to answer to the one it usually overlooked. Marcus never raised his voice. Because he didn't have to. The truth spoke loud enough. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It doesn't march in the streets or shake the windows with chance. Sometimes it sits in the front seat, hands on the wheel, breathing slow, knowing exactly who it is, and refusing to shrink. Marcus never wanted fame. He wanted fairness. He wasn't chasing headlines. He was chasing balance, the kind that doesn't come from punishment, but from principle. And on that day, with 3 guns pointed at his chest and a lie echoing through the radio, he chose not to yell, not to argue, not to beg. He chose silence, but not the silence of surrender. The silence of someone who knew that he was more than their assumptions, knew that the truth was waiting, patient, undeniable, heavy in his coat pocket. Because here's the truth. Racism doesn't check credentials. It doesn't ask for your business card before it judges your worth. It doesn't care if you're a father, a lawyer, a director, or a stranger just trying to get home. It just sees color and makes a call. But when that call is wrong and the lie meets the light, everything changes. Not through rage, but through revelation. Because power without integrity collapses. And dignity? Real dignity doesn't need to shout to be heard. It stands still. It speaks clearly. It lets the truth walk into the room and take its rightful place. Marcus didn't need revenge. He needed them to see what happens when the mirror is held up to the system, when the assumption becomes the evidence, and when a man they tried to silence was the very man holding the keys to their accountability. That day didn't just expose one cop. It revealed a pattern, and it reminded the world, silence, when rooted in truth, can roar louder than hate ever will. If this story made you pause, if it reminded you of someone who's been judged before they had a chance to speak, don't let it end here. Share it. Talk about it. Carry the conversation beyond the screen. Because stories like this aren't fiction for everyone. For many, they're reality, lived quietly, endured daily, unseen by those who need to see the most. We need more moments where truth stands tall, even when it's doubted, dismissed, or delayed. We need more people who hold systems accountable without losing their humanity. And we need more eyes on those who think no one's watching. So stay aware, stay kind, stay bold, and always stay human.